As Old as Time, Part 3. The Beast's Nightmare. The beast loped back to his castle on all fours. 1,000 different scents tried to distract him. Speedy squirrels and friendly wolves and tasty coonies. He couldn't let them. He managed the whole trip without stopping until he got to the gates. The walls around the castle were shining white with snow and the cobwebs. He reached out to push them aside, ready to use his full strength. But they broke easily at first, touch and fell. Getting in was easy. Going out again? He took a moment, thinking it like Belle. He would need to get out again. To lead everyone to a rescue, including the giant suits of armor, he needed to prepare for that. With a growl, he unleashed his claws and tore at the webbing. They sheared easily, drifting through the air and disappearing when they finally hit the ground, like sugar floss in water. All of his frustration and anger about Belle's capture went into clearing the gate and several feet beyond on either side. He then smashed the gates open, taking them off their hinges for good measure and hurling them as far as he could. It'd be harder for the webs to cover such a huge open gap. He did the same for the doors in the castle itself, ripping apart as much of the webbing as he could, and then smashing open the doors themselves. Icy wind and snow immediately blew into the castle, as if excited by the chance to invade and freeze the unnatural human dwelling. "Cogsworth!" he roared as soon as he was inside. "Lumiere! Guards! To me! Now!" Nothing. There was nothing. No sound, no movement, not a hint of anything in the castle was alive. For one insane moment he wondered if they had already left the castle, if they had decided on their own that he and Belle weren't up to the task and they needed help. He had seen no sign of them on his trip back, hadn't smelled anything of the castle or the smoke from Lumiere's candles. "Hello?" he roared again. "I am your master, the prince. Answer me." Perhaps they were in the servants' dining room, where they often gathered to avoid his wrath and console each other during the long years under his curse. He headed that way, and then paused in the hall of the suits of armor. They were all there, lined up, though not so perfect as they once were. The fight to get Belle and him out of the castle had left a few casualties. Some had notched and damaged swords, others weren't standing quite as straight as they should have been, almost as if they were tired. "Attention!" The prince bellowed, trying to remember his father and Cogsworth and old captains of the guard, trying to sound empowered, not entitled. Not one of them moved. A slow, creeping sense of horror crawled up the prince's spine, and he was not accustomed to being scared. Unsure why it took his legs so long to move, he shuffled over to the closest suit. Reluctantly, delicately, he tapped at its helmet with a single ivory claw. The helmet tipped and crashed to the floor, rolling and bouncing like the loudest thing in the world. Otherwise, everything remained stationary and silent. The suits of armor were just suits. All life in them gone, all the people they originally were now transformed permanently into inanimate objects. Dead. The prince raced through the darkened halls and silent rooms, downstairs to the kitchen. There, sitting in the hole, like a slightly unusual place setting, were a cold teapot, a clock that needed to be wound, and a candelabrum whose candles had burned down to their stubs and then gone out. The beast howled, picking up the thing that was once Lumiere and shaking it. Nothing happened. He looked around, desperate to grab another candle, to try and relight him. Maybe he could rewind Cogsworth. Then he realized he could only see it all because of his beast's eyes. The kitchen was dark and cold. His little puffs of breath were making clouds, that as a child he had called dragon smoke. He was all alone in his empty, dead castle.